tipo es como el cañón.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos. Quiero presentarles a la doctora Alan Evans, que es investigador titular, consultor en entrenamiento y evaluación de la Social School of Science en Cardiff University. Sus principales intereses son mentoría, entrenamientos y coaching, desarrollo profesional continuo, mejoramiento escolar, y cómo contrarrestar el bajo rendimiento, especialmente en varones. Alan Evans fue director de educación en el Education Department of the National Union of Teachers, Executive Chair of the Council for Education in the Commonwealth y actualmente es Chair of Private Scholars Association en GATS. Presento al doctor Alan Evans con ustedes.
Thank you very much. In a way, my presentation follows on directly from what you just heard with Tim Cowell, because I will be working in that territory of his fifth point to his eighth point. I'm going to be talking about prevention and risk, and the way that we approach mentoring in England and Wales, in Great Britain. And I'm going to tell you the story of three major projects, all funded by the government, in which we introduced mentoring into universities and schools in more than 30 communities right throughout Britain. And I'll tell you the story of that and talk about what we learned about quality and what we learned about effectiveness and how you have a program that does develop strong mentoring relationships, but it also develops strong outcomes, and that it leads to improved learning and an improved capacity of the mentee to be responsible for their own learning and for their examination performance. So that's the background. So, I'm going to talk about effective mentoring as in empowering young people from all walks of life, class, gender, religious belief, and disability. Mentoring can help young people be better organized, help them be more resilient, resourceful, imaginative, and to prosper and to survive and to succeed in very difficult circumstances. The mentoring I'm going to be talking about is in deprived parts of big cities across England and across Wales. So research studies suggest that 20% of the difference between pupil attainment in secondary schools can be explained by schools they attend at the added value. The rest of the difference of performance and capacity is about family, neighbourhood, community, and possibly mentoring accidents. That without proper planning, a particular mentor can achieve amazing things with individuals. What happened was I went to Peraj. I went to Israel in 1996, and I spent more than 8 or 9 days looking at mentoring and tutoring in Israel. I went to Rehovot, I went to Tel Aviv, I went to Haifa, I went to the Galilee, and I went to Jerusalem. And I looked at a range of mentoring programs in those universities linked to communities, and then came back and, drawing on some of the strengths of Peraj, designed a system that would work in England and Wales. And that system is universities working with schools and the mentoring taking place under the school roof, but not in the classroom, under the school roof. but not in the class. So the first project then, there were no mentoring schemes in universities in England or Wales. And we went to the government and we got enough money to establish and pay for in each university a mentoring office, pay for the training of the mentors, which we, Cardiff University, provided the team. We had 20 trained trainers who would go to all these 23 universities across England and Wales and train the individuals on a 2-day program. They worked with 1,000, we trained 1,000 university undergraduates, mainly second year and third year undergraduates, working in 120 schools. There was a bursary for each mentor, around $500 to £600, about $800 US. Accredited training for the mentors. They could fail the training. They could fail to get through the interview. They would then be deployed if they got through the interview. And if they did not do well on the training, and there was a trial at the end where they had to demonstrate that they could mentor in the presence of an observer and a mentee. And around 1 or 2 people out of 40, on average, failed to get through the training. And all the training was saying was, you're not ready to be a mentor now. We're very humble about that, because they could be a very good mentor in 2 years' time. They could be a very good mentor when they start their employed life 2 years later, 3 years later. But it was our informed judgment that they weren't ready. And the main reason for not being ready was they weren't listening to the mentee. The biggest mistake that mentors, potential mentors make is they don't listen and they believe without having heard the issue, they can solve the problems for their mentees. So the second phase, we expanded the program to 31 universities. But there was a difference, that in the first phase, we paid for the mentoring office in every university. In this phase, the university had to provide the mentoring office and provide administrative support to run the mentoring office. It's a bigger scheme, 180 schools, 1,500 mentors, and 6,000 mentees, partly funded by government and partly funded by the universities. And the project was evaluated by an independent evaluator. And then the last scheme, and this scheme was a new £21 million scheme provided by the government, and we, Cardiff University, were coordinating this whole scheme and were responsible for quality assurance and designing national training standard, the national training manual, associate's handbook. This is a mentoring handbook. The government, to try to show it was doing something new, they called the associates, they called the mentors associates. But they were mentors. They were mentors. In everything we did was we built on the 2 previous schemes. And then an administrative handbook for schools and universities. We found it very difficult with lots of universities because what they wanted to do was to beg the schools to join the scheme. Please, please join the scheme. And they conveyed a climate that the schools could break the rules. The schools could be in the scheme, although they did not give it a top priority. The schools could at the last minute select the mentees and not give it a lot of thought. The schools could leave it to the universities to match the mentees and the mentors when it is a joint responsibility. We also had universities where the mentoring coordinator was not the top person for the job, but somebody who hadn't done well somewhere else, so they pushed them over into mentoring. We had a number of failed academics whose departments didn't want them. You can't run quality schemes like that. And there was a tension between ourselves, coordinators, and several universities and several schools because they didn't give it the priority that a mentoring scheme needs. And if you don't give it a priority, then you don't achieve the full potential of the mentoring scheme. So what we wanted to do here, by having the national training standard, is to say you can't join unless you subscribe to this scheme. And for the first time we got the backing of the government, this £21 million scheme. I had a coordinator from the government who said, he means it. That is true. You don't join unless you do. Unless you subscribe, and I'll show you the 2-day program in a moment, unless you subscribe to 14 hours of training that has got the right balance of knowledge and mutual knowledge. The difference between knowledge about mentoring and mutual knowledge is that you grow it together. You do it. You argue about it. You say, what are the priorities? You say, is there a hierarchy of skills in mentoring? Is it about feedback, questioning, listening, action planning, target setting? What are the priorities? Is it about subject knowledge? Is it about empathy? Is it about sympathy? Is it about trust? Where is the hierarchy? There's a different hierarchy if it's mainly about the relationship than if it's about the relationship and improved outcome. But the important thing is that in training, good training is about knowledge, but it's about mutual knowledge. It's knowledge that you've argued about, discussed. You've done case studies. You've argued about what should be the approach here at the school, what should be the approach at the university, what should be the approach when a trainer finds this particular group or this particular exercise isn't working. Then it's different. That's mutual knowledge. Then there's the skills. And how deep do you have to go with the skills for them to change the nature? For instance, if you ask lots of closed questions, you'll never grow a relationship in mentoring. If the answer is yes, no, to lots of your questions, you'll never grow it. To grow a relationship, you've got to ask lots of open questions about how and what and who and where. I see what you mean, tell me more about that. What do you think would be done? You've got to ask that type of question. If you ask lots of closed questions, the relationship will not develop. You will sound like a school teacher. And I was a school teacher, and it's an honourable profession. But it's not the way that it works in mentoring. So mentoring is about knowledge, mutual knowledge, process, skills, and protocols and rules. And rules. Things you must not do. If you start off with criticism, it is death to mentoring. You've got to start with 3 or 4 positive things. And they've got to be authentic, and they've got to be real, and they've got to make the mentee feel good. But at the same time, you've also then got to find a way of introducing something constructively critical, which the mentee is willing to address. So this battle here of good training. I'll give you an example. We have the standard, and we have the manual, and then we were looking after 120 universities. I had a team of 20 people, so we sent our team all over the country to watch training. And in one very good university, it's in the top 10 in Britain, they decided they would train 80 people in a rake theatre. And the rake theatre had 40 or 50 seats across the theatre. And when it came to doing the exercise, they passed it along the road. And they were supposed to do training in a straight line. 50 people. So, my quality assurance person came back and told me, I said, right, I'll go sit. And the 10, 12 trainers all turned up to discuss the matter with me as if somehow I would be cowed by numbers. I said, you can't train like that. Why did you ever think you could train like that? And they changed it. But it was a real battle to get a national training standard and a national training manual. Now, this is a spectrum of personal development. And here you have tutoring. You could put alongside it teaching, the didactic side, coaching, mentoring, light touch counselling, which is basically saying, yeah, I see what you mean, yes, okay, that's about right, yes. And then befriending. And I think some of befriending is what we've been seeing in the last 2 days as informal mentoring. Befriending it's not about challenge. There's no challenge in befriending. In mentoring and coaching, there is challenge and support. We train people to do these 3 things. To do a little bit of tutoring, and in the beginning you need to do. We're talking now about training year 10, year 11, 15 and 16-year-old boys and girls from deprived parts of big cities to get A, B and C in their examinations, and they are predicted to get D's, E's and F's. They're predicted not to be able to get an A to C. And the plan is to help them improve their learning, to do their homework well, to a time and to a good standard, to prepare properly for examinations, to revise, to take an interest in themselves and get a proper organisation between their academic work, their vocational work and their social lives. And you start off with little bits of tutoring and you move in the early days to quite a bit of coaching. You coach them in how to be better learners. And you do it so they don't know. It's like the crab. You know the story about you boil a crab, you boil the crab in the hot water and jump out. But if you put the crab in the cold water and you boil it slowly, the poor crab dies. He dies because he didn't know it was happening to him. He didn't know it was happening to him. And with students, school students, there's no point in you saying you've got to work harder. You're only working 2 hours a week at homework, you've got to work 8 to get A, B and C. That won't work. They will just resist you and they'll stop coming. But if you say to them, let's do a diary about how you organize your life. Catch the bus to school at 8 o'clock in the morning, you get to school at 8:30, you leave school at 2:30, you come home, you go to the fridge, get a Coke, you chill out, and then in England, 4 nights a week, the boys go out. They go out at 6 o'clock, sometimes to coffee bars, sometimes to the gymnasium, to play sport, to do coaching, to play an instrument, to do a gig, but they are out 4 nights a week, from 6 o'clock to 8, 9 o'clock. The girls only go out 1 night a week. Girls work harder. The girls do well. 2/3 of all the students in universities in England are girls. They're young women. 10 years ago, it was 50%. Today, it's 2 out of every 3. It's the same on the side of California. Western side is the same on the eastern side of America. It's the same in New Zealand. It's the same in Australia. So the girls are better organized students. They focus better. They review their work better. So you say to the boys about the diary, you say, okay, would you be willing to write down when you come home from school the homework that has been set during the day. When does the homework have to be in school by? And what you need to be able to do the homework and get a good grade. And you coach them in how to make that plan. That plan takes about 20 minutes, that's all. And then you do a little trick. And you say, when can you do the last part of this homework? And if the homework was set on a Monday, the last part of this homework is Sunday night. Until they had a mentor, most of the boys would start the homework on Sunday night. And they would then find out they didn't know what the homework was, they didn't have the book, they didn't have the piece of software, they didn't know where it was on the internet, and they couldn't do it. So on the Monday, they then spend energy explaining why they couldn't do the homework, or they didn't go. If they put it down on a piece of paper, like we just talked about, what happens is that they don't just do 20 minutes, they do half an hour, they do 3/4 an hour. Within a month, they're doing an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours homework every night. Either before they go out, or an hour before they go out and half an hour when they come back. And it leads to a profound change in their examination results and the way they organize themselves. From 2 hours to 8 hours in 3 to 4 months with a mentor. The other thing about boys is, boys believe they cannot learn a subject if they don't like the teacher. If they don't like the French teacher, they can't learn. If they don't like the math teacher, they can't learn. Girls don't believe that. If you say the girls' career plan, they'll do it. They'll do it. Because they need it for their career plan. But with a mentor, and the mentor doesn't get involved with a conflict with the school, the mentor says, we'll do it together. With a mentor, they can learn a subject with a teacher they don't like. Or they believe the teacher doesn't like them. Or they believe the teacher doesn't recognize their efforts. What you're trying to do is move from coaching to mentoring. Mentoring is much harder than coaching. Coaching comes more naturally. The problem with coaching is that often coaches don't listen enough. But there's a new breed of coaches that are now getting better at listening, and it's called non-directive coaching. What you want to do over time is to transfer the ownership of the agenda for the meeting from the mentor to the mentee. And you're transferring it through using the classical mentoring techniques of reminding what happened last time. If there's a problem and they say, I can never be able to do this, you then remind them of a success last week or the week before. One of the things you do at the beginning, one of the difficulties is establishing a working relationship, establishing rapport. That's not an easy thing to do. And you're looking for, you say, what do your friends say you're good at? What other things outside of the school do you enjoy? Do you value? Do you really feel fulfilled? Does that excite you? Do you find that cool? And you then, when there's a problem, in the first couple of weeks you're trying to get success. Success from doing something at school, getting the diary, getting a plan, doing this, doing that, sharing a poster, sharing a map, getting that bits of success. And then, when there's a problem, you've got credit to draw that in. So, in the latter part, we have moved from tutoring, and we've moved from coaching to mainly mentoring. The problem with training is that the stakeholders, the schools and the universities, underestimate what serious training is about. It's too soft the way they do it. It isn't rigorous enough. Large amounts of training for so-called mentoring is not training, it's briefing. They tell them about it. They don't do case studies. They don't do exercises. They don't have large numbers of things on the table which they've got to reorganize and restructure and answer questions to each other. They don't have to defend that with another group of fellow students who want to be mentored. It's just too descriptive, it's briefing. Good training has to be analytical, it has to be skills driven, and it has to have case studies, it has to have exercises, and it's got to be authentic, it's got to be linked. About 4 or 5 years ago I was asked to go to Bangkok, and there were 6 different nations coming, including Mexico. And in order for that training to be in any way effective, I was training the trainers. I had to do case studies from all 6 countries. So I had to do the case studies from Mexico, from Morocco, from Saudi Arabia, that wasn't easy, Singapore, and so on. But you can't train effectively unless you do that, unless you've got that set of materials. So we've done this. Encourage your mentees to develop critical and creative thinking. Encourage the mentees to build on incremental success to reach their potential. Encourage mentees to develop a language. What you're doing as a mentor is that the way you talk, the way you deal with issues, the way you tell stories. Telling stories is absolutely visceral. We need stories to move us from where we are to another place. Telling stories, both your own stories as a mentor, or telling stories about people you've known or friends, or telling wonderful stories about Vygotsky and other people as if they were your friends, which they are. Telling stories is absolutely, and you develop this language. And you'll enjoy it as a mentor a few months later when you hear them coming back and telling you things which you know you planted the seed, which is wonderful. Encourage the mentees to work at the edge and not just at the center of their capacity. Now in the beginning, you'll work in the center. In the beginning, you'll set them things that they will succeed at. Because you need this bank of successes in order to build up resilience and to cope with difficulties. But you want to move them, not to getting a D or a C, you want to move them to getting a B and an A across 5 or 6 subjects. Assist the mentee to set clear and effective long-term goals and short-term targets. Review progress against targets and goals in the most collaborative way, in a way that they hardly notice that part of this is challenging. When you ask mentors, potential mentors, in that first session, and you've got the 40-odd cards here describing all the different types of issues that are related to mentors, and you say important, not so important, etc. They'll put not so important, they'll put challenge, because they're afraid of challenge. They think challenge is confrontational, and they've not learned yet how to make challenge a powerful tool in personal growth and personal development. Okay. I like this. This is Michael Fuller, and he's talking about leadership. And I see our mentors as leaders. When we saw with Amos and with Peraj, Mexico, we saw future leaders. I like this change. That a background of what the mentors are doing is moral purpose, understanding change, relationship building, creating knowledge, that mutual knowledge that you're sharing together about how you do things, revision, skills, examinations, but also how you view developments in the outside world, and how you view, if for instance a school was going to develop a new sports or music faculty and was causing a lot of interest and concern in the school, and the mentee might ask you about that. How you talk about that change is a powerful and then coherence making. So that's the training. Understand the mentoring program, understand the ethics and procedures, develop emotional intelligence, one-to-one and group, planning, delivery and reflection. And then it's 80% the training interactive and only 20%. And what happens in a large amount of training I've seen that we were not responsible for, it would be 80% descriptive and only 20% interactive. That's not good training. Countering barriers to learning and how to do that in an effective way, in a way that enhances and empowers the mentee, not makes them feel difficult. Okay. These are headlines on a 4-page document, and we don't need to worry about that. I've mentioned the assessment and their involvement with the evaluation. Okay, I've mentioned the handbook, aims and objectives, the role of the mentor, the benefits of the scheme for the mentors and mentees, a model ethical code of practice for the mentors, which they subscribe to, and there's about 20 points there of how they should relate to their job and confidentiality and all the rest of it, and they do that. And then there is a section on the 20 things that a university coordinator must do to run an effective scheme, and the 18, 19 things that a school coordinator must do, and how they review and monitor this work in the school, review and monitor this work in university, how they meet together and review the effectiveness of the scheme over the last 12 months, and to decide what changes and improvements will they make in the following year. And then evaluation, quantitative and qualitative, and you can do this at 2 or 3 levels. You can have a scheme within the university itself, but it has to have some funding to be able to undertake that. The qualitative is much less costly, but you do have to do the interview, you do have to do the correlations. You can do it for a region, several universities together. For that you need external funding to be able to do so. But there are benefits from doing it in the sense that you get more acceptability, and when you put your next submission into government, you've got something to demonstrate. And this is a big problem. I've been talking to colleagues, one of them was here today, we've been talking about this problem of continually needing to reinvent mentoring in order to get the funding from government or other specialist agencies. Quality assurance, I mentioned that to you. And that's it. Good, okay. There's a quote that I wanted to mention from October Paz, and he talks about that we lost our sense of wanting to drink from a fresh spring. And what good mentoring is about, it is about drinking from a fresh spring. There's an authenticity. Out there we've got, in Britain, about 1 million undergraduates. Here I sense about even more than that. And this is a spring of energy, imagination, resourcefulness. We've just got to provide the frameworks for them to make a commitment to the development of individual children and to make a contribution to their schools and to their communities. Thank you very much. Have we got time for... Okay, there's one here, and then, yes. Yeah, you need the mic, yes.
The program in Mexico is being carried out with very little staff and very low budget. So the quality assurance is carried out, but without the sort of support that we need to be better. And obtaining funds in order to do quality assurance, and which would imply having a larger staff, is not forthcoming. Would there be an international foundation or anybody that would fund something like a quality assurance program in order to help this achievement? Or what did you tell the government policymakers that would accept, that would fund, give the sufficient funds you got in order to have this quality assurance and improving the type of training that the mentors got in their university?
It's a good question. It's difficult to ask private sponsors or even foundations to fund part of a project like quality assurance. That's a very tall ask. There are times when, because of a scandal in a particular region of poverty and of a state or a set of schools failing a group of young people, you might manage there, where there was such a row about it that you went to the right door and knocked on and said, look, we've got to do something for this community, and you might manage it that way. The better way is to build it in, which is what we did. When that £21 million program, we could have gone for, instead of 180 schools, we could have gone for 190. And government would have said yes. We went for slightly fewer schools so we could have quality assurance. And then was able to demonstrate what were the benefits of quality assurance. So it's not an easy one there, but I would, until we get to a much larger mass system, the systems we've got at the moment, to move from where we are to slightly farther along the road, I would build in some quality assurance.
I don't want to convey that we are improvising. We have the manuals. We have the teacher, the instructor, what do you call it? The instructor manuals. Everything is documented in such a way as Armando calls it a social franchise.
It's very good.
Right? But nevertheless, we are really relying very much on the university staff themselves to keep quality up, because we're unable to visit everybody and do an external job.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult to talk about a scheme that I know so little. And it might be that we could have a pilot quality assurance where 3 or 4 universities say, okay, you can train 2 or 3 of our people, but they shouldn't do the quality assurance in their own university. They should go to the university down the road. And 2 people should go and look at it, and then they mutually do a mutual swap. They get the feedback from the university down the road about their training, and they give it to their training. So that you could start off with a pilot of 7 universities, and they agree that they will provide us the training and a small amount of release for people to be able to do the QA. Okay.
I'm Evans. Thanks for your presentation. My name is Hugo, and I work for one of the largest scholarship programs here in Mexico. It's called Becados. We started last year e-mentoring. We have a platform that connects mentees with mentors. And it's been a challenge. It's the first time that we're doing something like this in the country. There's 2 or 3 different experiences. So we have no doubt on how to proceed with this. And I was just curious when you mentioned the training program for mentors. What we do, since everything is online, and since our priority of students are all over the country, and it's really hard to set up a one-on-one mentoring, which will be the ideal. We ask our mentors when they register to follow up, kind of like a slideshow. It's probably like 1-hour training program. So your presentation actually makes me realize that we have a lot to do and a lot to improve regarding the training and the proper formation for them. But you mentioned that some of them fail, and I was just curious how they fail. Like, is there like a test? Because there's that certification involved, and I think that would be quite interesting for some of our mentors as well. So I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit about it. Thanks so much.
There's two types of accreditation, well, assessment, and then I'll come to the accreditation. There's two types of assessment that we use. One was that you go through all the exercises, you've done your 2 days, and you've got exercises on questioning, listening, giving and receiving feedback, action planning, target setting, and so on. You've also done, once or twice, you would have done a mentoring conversation. So you've done some practice of mentoring as a mentee and a mentor. And right at the end, you, let's say I've got 12. I've got 12 here now. And I've got 4 trainers. So I've got 3 there, and I've got 3 there, and I've got 3 there, and I've got 3 there. Okay. The mentor, the mentor is looking into the room. The mentor there is looking into the room. I'm the assessor here. I am able to watch that mentor mentoring that person with that problem. The problem being brought by the mentee is normally an educational problem, a social problem. It can't be a problem like I lost my boyfriend or I lost my girlfriend. You know, it's got to be a serious problem. I want to change my course and the dean of students won't listen to me. Okay? I can watch that mentor, that mentor, that mentor, and that mentor, and have a good idea. They're not supposed to interrupt. For the first 3 to 4 minutes, the mentee is supposed to lay out the problem without interruption. And what you get some mentors who interrupt within a minute. And what happens is there's 15 minutes for the exercise. The ones who interrupt within a minute, they don't use the 15 minutes. They're lucky if they go to 7. And then I say, carry on. Carry on. And eventually I let them go at 11, 12. But out of that exercise, and then I've got an observer, and I've got a mentee. So each one is a mentor, a mentee, and an observer, and there's a grid that they've got to fill in at the end. So I then collect in. I've also got, besides myself, I've got 2 or 3 other trainers walking around the room. So we then meet and decide how they all got through. And we've got the grids in front of us. And what we're looking for is, when a mentor made a mistake and interrupted, did he know? And did he recognize it? And when he filled in the form at the end, did he say, I shouldn't have interrupted? Okay. And then they give feedback then. The mentee gives feedback to the mentor on what it was like to be mentored by him, her. And that's normally overgenerous. That's normally overgenerous. And then the mentor gives feedback on what it was like mentoring to them. And then the observer gives feedback to the both of them. And that takes 3/4 of an hour. And by the time you get them out, it's an hour. And then, if they all did well, you can complete the whole exercise in an hour. I've had to sometimes say 3 to 4 hours afterwards because I've got 2 or 3 problems. Until we are agreed that 90% have passed, 95% have passed, but 2 have failed. And then you've got to give them feedback. You give them feedback the following day or whatever. So that's one way. Another way is that you've got red, yellow, and green. And you're watching them coming back from sessions. Some of them are late, so you make a note of that. They You made an agreement at the beginning with the rules of the session, and the rules of the session are confidentiality, everybody should participate, this and that, and punctuality. They don't put punctuality in, you put punctuality in. But some of them do put punctuality in. So they've got a ground rules for the 2 days designed by them. And you're also watching now whether they abide by their own ground rules. And there'll be one or two that have been late or whatever, or one or two that you said, we've all made an agreement, no mobile phones. And no doing anything with the mobile phone underneath. We've all made that agreement. One or two will try and test the boundary. So at the end of it, you then got the same problem, but it's not an open system, it's a closed system. The other one was an open system. They were doing it, they gave feedback on it, they knew all about, that's the one I prefer, but there are some universities that do the traffic light. And then there's a discussion. The traffic light is slightly more generous. Fewer people fail the traffic light than fail what I call the triad. The triad. Okay. All right? Anybody else?
One issue here. I get the feeling that this has to be presential, not online. The process to be carried out through internet system at a distance might not allow you to evaluate the mentors and the mentor training, such as what you have described.
It's not impossible. It's not impossible. And online training is better than no training. What I would want to, if I found my way back to Mexico, and we were sitting down and we spent days and days, we'd work at it, because what you've got to do is, you've got to get the case studies and the exercises and the various other components that deepen the understanding of what you mean by feedback, questioning, problem solving, that all those things that rearrange their ideas of thinking about how people learn and how people get motivated and how people get committed and how people are willing to change ways that don't work to ways that do work. Now, online that's a challenge. It would be better than nothing, and we could definitely improve. I don't know how good online training is. We could I have a sense that if we're willing to do the case studies, the exercises, and all the other things I've talked about, we could improve it. I mean, do you do case studies and exercises online? You do? Yeah. Well, it might be a good vehicle. I mean, I don't know how good it is.
What we think, I mean, since our number of fisheries and mentees is pretty large, we're talking hundreds of thousands of young people throughout Mexico, it makes it really complex to do one-on-one, to do personal training.
Yeah.
But we do believe in the mentoring system and the benefits that the young person can receive from that.
Yeah.
But since there's this complexity, I was just wondering, has it been in the UK?
No, they haven't been able to translate.
Sorry about that. I was just saying, it's very complex, our case, because we're talking like a very, very large number, and we truly believe that the ideal will be one-on-one mentoring and personal training. But because of our conditions, it's very complex. So I was just wondering, has there been in the UK any effort or any line on doing this online? What's your opinion on this effort to respond to a project that is not really doable on a regular basis, and you have to adapt it to do something online in order to have an impact that is better than nothing than doing nothing? Has there been any efforts?
There's no major study in the UK, but I would be certainly willing to look for you and come back to you. Give me your email, and I'll give you my card, or write to me, and I'll go. And